The sun had long disappeared behind the jagged mountains of Eden 6, leaving Mara Lorne's small ranch bathed in the soft, violet glow of the twin moons. The air was thin and cold, but Mara had long grown used to the chill. She wrapped her worn jacket tightly around herself as she stepped onto the porch of her modest homestead, gazing over the fields. The soil, once rich and fertile, now struggled to grow anything substantial. Her husband had loved this land with a passion she still felt, even after his death. And now, alone, she was doing her best to honor his memory. Her boots crunched on the thin layer of frost that had settled overnight. The cows, genetically engineered earth-bred cattle, moved slowly in the grazing field, their soft lowing echoing across the valley. She sighed, rubbing her forehead. Managing the ranch alone was hard. The irrigation systems were old and faltering, and some of the solar panels had stopped functioning months ago. Supplies from the colony were slow, and Mara had learned the hard way not to rely too much on bureaucratic schedules. She was just about to go inside when a sharp, rhythmic knock sounded at her airlock. Mara froze. Visitors were rare. Most people avoided Eden 6, thinking it too harsh for a permanent stay. The knock came again, slightly hesitant this time, as if whoever it was wasn't sure she would answer. Who could that be at this hour? Mara muttered to herself. Her hand hovered near the airlock control. She hesitated, then pressed the release button. The inner airlock hissed open, and a cold gust of wind carried the faint scent of ionized metal and dust from the moonscape. Standing in the dim light was a man, tall and sturdy, with a rugged face marked by years of sun and wind. His coat was patched in places, and his boots looked like they had walked across several moons. "They told me you needed a ranch hand," he said simply, his voice calm but carrying a quiet strength. Mara's eyes narrowed slightly. She had not posted any ads or requested help. "Who told you that?" she asked, suspicious but curious. "Names don't matter," the man replied, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I heard you could use an extra pair of hands. I can work." Mara studied him for a long moment. There was something honest about his eyes, something steady and unassuming. Still, the rules of the frontier had taught her caution. "And you are?" she asked finally. "Rylan Ward," he said, tipping his head slightly. Then, almost shyly, he gestured behind him. Mara followed his gaze and froze. A small figure stepped out from behind him, barely taller than Mara's knee. It was a little girl, no older than 9 or 10, with bright, curious eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Her hair shimmered with a faint silver tint, as if it reflected the moon's light. "This is my daughter, Lyra," Rylan said softly. "She helps me on the ranches we visit." Mara blinked. Something about the girl felt different. Not just a child's curiosity, but a kind of awareness she couldn't quite place. Lyra didn't fidget or hide. She simply watched Mara, with an intensity that made her feel almost measured. I don't know if I need help," Mara admitted, trying to steady her voice. "It's been just me for months. I've managed." She trailed off, realizing she sounded more lonely than she intended. Rylan stepped forward, carefully keeping Lyra behind him. "I don't want to intrude. I just thought maybe I could help. Even a little." Mara studied him again. He seemed harmless, and there was a calm reliability about him that made her think of the way her husband had moved through the ranch. Something about Rylan was familiar in that way. "I don't even know your skills," Mara said finally. "What makes you think you can help?" Rylan gestured toward the equipment lying in disrepair near the barn. "I've worked on many ranches. I know about cattle, crops, irrigation. I'm not a fancy technician, but I get things working." Mara sighed, rubbing her temples. She hated relying on anyone. She had lost her husband and learned that depending on others sometimes led to disappointment. But the ranch was falling apart, and she was tired in a way that seeped into her bones. "All right," she said reluctantly. "You can stay for a week. If you can prove you're useful, maybe longer." Rylan nodded, a small smile appearing on his face. That's fair. Thank you. Lyra stepped forward then, slowly, almost cautiously. She tilted her head, eyes glinting in the moonlight. I can help too, she said softly. Her voice was calm, but there was a hint of something unusual in it, something that made Mara's heart skip a beat. Mara forced herself to smile. We'll see about that, she said, trying to hide her curiosity. They moved inside, the airlock sealing behind them with a hiss. The interior of the ranch house was modest but well kept. The walls were lined with tools, shelves of supplies, and a small dining table. A few holographic pictures of her late husband, smiling among the cattle, were scattered around. Rylan placed a small bag on the floor. We don't need much, he said. Just a place to sleep and something to eat. Mara nodded, still watching Lyra carefully. The girl was quiet, moving slowly as if studying every corner of the room. Her eyes lingered on the old control panels, the soil moisture monitors, and even the small hydroponic setup in the corner. You like plants? Mara asked, curious. Lyra nodded. I like to listen to them. Mara blinked. Listen? Lyra smiled faintly. The soil, the roots, they talk if you pay attention. Mara couldn't help a small laugh. Well, I've been paying attention for years, and they never said a word to me. They do, Lyra whispered. They just speak in quiet ways. Mara felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something undeniably special about this girl. Something beyond the usual. She shook it off and led them to a small room that would serve as their quarters. After Rylan and Lyra had settled, Mara excused herself to check on the irrigation system. She didn't expect them to follow, but she glanced back to see Lyra already examining the soil near the main water line. The girl's small hands moved carefully over the dirt, and she whispered something that Mara could not hear. Curious, Mara approached. What are you doing? Lyra looked up, eyes wide. Helping. The soil is thirsty here. It wants the water to go evenly, not in one big splash. Mara stared at the girl, half in disbelief. Then she shook her head. All right. We'll see what you can do tomorrow. For now, dinner. That evening, the three sat together at the small table, eating the simple meal Mara had prepared. Hydroponic vegetables, rehydrated grains, and a small portion of protein from the ranch's stock. Conversation was sparse at first, but slowly, Rylan shared stories of the ranches he and Lyra had worked on, describing distant moons and the challenges of frontier life. Lyra listened quietly, occasionally adding her own observations. Mara found herself smiling at the little girl's cleverness and calm nature. She was unlike any child Mara had known, intelligent, intuitive, and strangely attuned to the world around her. As they finished the meal, Mara realized that for the first time in months, she didn't feel entirely alone. The ranch might be falling apart in some ways, but the presence of Rylan and Lyra brought a strange, new sense of hope. Later, as she watched them settle in for the night, Mara couldn't help but wonder about the girl's unusual abilities. She was clearly special in some way. But how? And more importantly, could she really help Mara save the ranch she had fought so hard to maintain? For the first time since her husband's passing, Mara felt a glimmer of anticipation for what tomorrow might bring. And outside, under the light of the twin moons, the wind whispered softly through the fields, as if acknowledging the arrival of new life on the lonely ranch of Eden 6. The morning light on Eden 6 was soft, almost silvery, as it filtered through the thin atmosphere. Mara Lorne stirred awake to the hum of the ranch's old solar systems and the occasional lowing of the cattle. The past night had been unusually quiet, giving her a rare sense of peace she hadn't felt in months. Rylan was already outside when she stepped onto the porch, checking the fences and the irrigation lines. He moved with a quiet confidence, measuring, adjusting, and fixing things Mara didn't even notice were broken. Lyra was crouched near the edge of the pasture, her small hands brushing lightly over the soil, her silver-tinted hair catching the morning light. Morning, Mara called softly. Rylan turned, smiling. Morning, Mara. The water pumps are running, but the Westfield's valve is sluggish. I'll check it after breakfast. Mara nodded, then glanced at Lyra. "And what about you? What are you doing there?" Lyra didn't look up immediately. She murmured something under her breath as she ran her fingers through the soil. Then she said quietly, "The land is tired. It wants water and care. Not just machines." Mara blinked. That was unusual. The soil talking? It sounded almost silly in theory. Yet something in the way Lyra's hands moved, the calm focus in her eyes, made Mara pause. There was no doubt that the child seemed attuned to the land in a way humans rarely were. Breakfast was simple hydrated grains, a few protein bars, and some rehydrated vegetables. But the three ate together in a way Mara hadn't realized she missed. Conversation flowed more freely now. Ryland shared stories from the distant moons he and Lyra had worked on. Lyra listened quietly, occasionally adding clever observations about the land or animals. After breakfast, Mara decided to test Lyra's unusual abilities. "All right, Lyra," she said, handing the girl a small trowel. "There's a section of the West Field where the crops have been wilting. Can you tell me what's wrong?" Lyra knelt down immediately, pressing her hands gently on the soil. She closed her eyes, tilting her head slightly. Mara watched her, fascinated. "They need water in smaller amounts, more often," Lyra whispered after a moment. "The soil is dry in patches, but too wet in others." "It's confused." Mara frowned. It was true the irrigation system had uneven flow. Even Rylan had struggled to balance it yesterday. "Show me," Mara said. Lyra stood and pointed toward a small irrigation pipe. She motioned for Mara to adjust the valves slightly, then gently pressed the water lever. Almost immediately, the wilting crops began to perk up. Mara blinked in surprise. Rylan whistled quietly. "Well, that's impressive." "It's nothing," Lyra said modestly, though her eyes sparkled with satisfaction. "The land just tells you what it needs if you listen." Mara laughed softly. "I wish your father had been around to see this. He would have loved it." Rylan looked down at her with a small, thoughtful smile. "She's always been able to sense things like this. That's why I travel with her. Most people don't understand." Mara nodded slowly. She was beginning to realize that Lyra's abilities might be more than just clever intuition. Perhaps the girl had a unique connection with nature itself, something humans rarely experienced. The morning passed with more work in the fields. Rylan focused on fixing broken irrigation pipes and checking the fences, while Lyra moved among the crops, whispering to the soil and making small adjustments that Mara couldn't always see. Mara herself worked alongside them, feeling a sense of cooperation she hadn't known in years. By midday, the West Field was starting to look healthier. The crops were no longer drooping, and the soil seemed more evenly moist. Mara stood back, wiping sweat from her brow, and looked at the two of them. "You're both amazing," she admitted quietly. "I don't know what I would do without you." Rylan shook his head. "We're just helping. You've done most of the hard work already." Lyra smiled faintly. "The land wants to help too," she said. Mara frowned slightly. "The land wants to help?" she repeated. A little unsure. Lyra nodded. "It changes when people care. When they listen, it responds. It's like it's alive, not just soil and plants, but a whole world that can understand kindness." Mara felt a chill, not from the cold, but from the words themselves. Could it really be true? The crops were thriving now. Yes, but was it Lyra's presence that made the difference? The afternoon brought visitors Mara had not expected. Small drones from the colony council floated above the fields, scanning the land and taking measurements. The council was known for strict regulations and little patience with frontier farmers. Mara's heart sank. "What are they doing here?" she whispered. Rylan glanced up, frowning. "Likely checking your operations. The council has been monitoring Eden 6 closely since the last failed terraforming attempts." Lyra tilted her head, observing the drones silently. "They're worried," she said softly. "They don't understand yet. But if we show them, they might see." Mara felt unsure. She had faced council inspections before, and they were rarely friendly. But she also felt a strange confidence seeing Lyra so calm. When the drones landed near the house, a holographic voice projected into the air. Mara Lorne, this is the Eden 6 Council. We are here to evaluate your ranching operations. Please provide access to your land and systems. Mara nodded, stepping forward. Of course, please, come in. Rylan and Lyra followed silently. Mara guided the council representatives across the fields, showing them the irrigation systems, the soil sensors, and the crops. She explained the adjustments she had made to compensate for failing equipment. Lyra walked slightly ahead, her small hands brushing the crops and whispering to the soil. Mara could see the council drones focusing on her, scanning the girl with quiet interest. One of the council members, a tall, thin human with sharp eyes, stopped and studied Lyra. Is this child part of your operations? Mara nodded. Yes. She helps me manage the land. Lyra looked up calmly. The soil tells me what it needs. It helps the crops grow better than machines alone. The council member raised an eyebrow. And you claim this is normal? Lyra smiled faintly. Normal isn't always best. Sometimes listening is better than controlling. Mara was amazed. The council members were silent for a long moment, clearly unsure how to respond to such a statement. Then one of them said, We will take measurements and decide if your methods are acceptable. Rylan placed a reassuring hand on Mara's shoulder. By evening, the council had completed their evaluation and left, though Mara could sense the quiet curiosity lingering. She was unsure what their final judgment would be. But for now, the ranch seemed to have survived another challenge. As night fell, the three returned to the house. Mara prepared a simple dinner, while Lyra quietly examined the soil near the hydroponic trays. Lyra, Mara said softly, do you really listen to the land? Lyra nodded. It's like music, she said. Every plant has its note. Every root has a rhythm. If you follow it, the land will show you what it wants. Mara smiled faintly. I've never heard anything like that. Maybe I never really listened. Lyra glanced up, her eyes bright. It's never too late. Rylan sat beside Mara, offering her a tired but warm smile. You're doing fine, he said. Better than fine. We just needed a little help. Mara felt a strange warmth in her chest. For the first time in months, she didn't feel like a lonely widow struggling against the land alone. She had two new companions, a father and daughter who understood the frontier, who could bring hope and care to the ranch she loved. Outside, the twin moons shone softly over Eden 6, and the wind whispered through the fields. Mara paused at the window, watching the soil, the crops, and even the strange luminescent vines that had started appearing along the edges of the pasture. Something about them seemed alive. Lyra knelt beside her, hands resting lightly on the sill. The land is listening too, she said. It's learning, and it likes you. Mara laughed softly, a sound of quiet relief. Then I guess we better keep listening too. The night passed with little sleep, but Mara didn't mind. For the first time in a long while, she felt a spark of hope. The ranch might survive, and maybe, just maybe, Eden 6 had more to teach humanity than anyone had imagined. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the soft scent of soil and growing plants. It was a promise of life, of growth, and of a future where humans and this strange, vibrant moon could thrive together. The morning sun barely kissed the horizon when Mara woke to a strange sight outside her window. The once quiet fields of her ranch were now dotted with soft, glowing patches of luminescent vines. Their gentle light shimmered in shades of green and blue, curling around the rocks and creeping slowly along the soil. Mara rubbed her eyes, unsure if she was still dreaming. She had never seen anything like it in all her years on Eden 6. Lyra was already outside, crouched beside the glowing vines. She hummed softly, her hands hovering just above the leaves without touching them. Mara stepped outside, careful not to startle her. Rylan followed, carrying a small toolkit in case the vines had somehow affected the irrigation systems. "Good morning," Mara said cautiously. What are these?" Lyra didn't look up immediately. "They're talking to the soil," she whispered. "The vines want to grow here. They're friendly." "Friendly?" Mara repeated, confused. She stepped closer, squinting at the glowing leaves. "But they weren't here yesterday. And glowing? That's unusual," Lyra nodded. "They only appear when the land decides it's ready for help. They're asking for guidance, not control. The soil is changing, and it trusts me." Mara felt a chill run through her. She had always known Eden 6 was different, but she had never imagined the land itself could communicate. And yet, watching Lyra move among the vines, it was clear the girl had a rare connection to them. Rylan knelt beside a patch of vines, carefully brushing them aside from a small irrigation pipe. "Well," he said thoughtfully, "they aren't harming anything. The water flow is normal. Maybe they really are just observing." Mara frowned. "Observing? Plants don't observe. They grow, that's all." Lyra tilted her head. "Not all plants are ordinary," she said softly. "These. They remember, and they learn. They respond to care and kindness. The soil told them about us, and they decided to help." Mara felt a mixture of awe and uncertainty. The thought of intelligent plant life living, learning, and interacting with humans was more than she could easily process. Yet there it was, right in her fields, glowing softly under the early sun. "All right," Mara said finally, taking a deep breath. "Let's see what they can do. If they really want to help the ranch, then we should try to cooperate." Rylan nodded. "Agreed. Let's work carefully. No sudden moves. Just guide them." The next few hours passed in a quiet rhythm of observation and adjustment. Lyra led the way, speaking softly to the vines and occasionally adjusting the flow of water. The glowing plants seemed to respond instantly, curling toward the pipes and roots, ensuring the soil received exactly the right amount of moisture. Mara and Rylan followed her instructions, adjusting valves and gently turning the irrigation lines. Slowly, the crops began to perk up, their leaves lifting and glistening in the sunlight. Mara felt a surge of hope. The west field, which had been struggling for months, now looked healthier than it had in years. The luminescent vines seemed to retreat slightly, leaving the crops fully exposed to the sun, as if satisfied with their work. "Remarkable," Rylan said quietly. "I've seen a lot of strange things in my life, but this is something else." Lyra smiled faintly. "The land wants to work with us. It's not against us. We just need to listen." Mara watched her, fascinated. She realized that the girl's presence didn't just improve the ranch, it seemed to improve the land itself. Somehow, Lyra's abilities were helping Eden 6 cooperate with human efforts, rather than resist them. The calm of the morning, however, was soon interrupted by a strange rumbling beneath their feet. The ground shivered slightly, and Mara instinctively grabbed Lyra's shoulder. "What's happening?" she asked, alarmed. Lyra's eyes widened, but she didn't panic. "It's just the soil shifting. Eden 6 is alive. It moves beneath the surface sometimes, rearranging itself to help the plants grow better. It's not dangerous." Rylan frowned. "Alive? You mean like the vines? Or something more?" Lyra nodded. "More. The soil itself is aware. It knows what it wants. It's teaching us. If we pay attention." Mara couldn't help but feel a mixture of wonder and fear. The ranch had always been difficult, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. She thought of her late husband, who had dreamed of making Eden 6 thrive. She felt certain he would have marveled at what Lyra was doing. As the day progressed, Mara noticed something else. Small shoots of alien plants, previously unseen, began appearing along the edges of the ranch. They glowed faintly and seemed to move subtly toward the water lines, as if drawn by the life-giving moisture. Lyra explained that the plants were part of Eden 6's natural ecosystem, and that they responded positively when humans treated the land with care. By afternoon, Mara and Rylan had repaired the major irrigation lines, guided by Lyra's intuitive directions. The fields now seemed more balanced than ever before. Mara couldn't remember the last time she had felt such relief. Rylan leaned against a fence post, wiping sweat from his brow. "You know," he said, "most people would be scared of this. Alien plants that glow and talk to a child? They'd think it's a threat." Mara nodded. "I've been on this planet long enough to know that fear often comes from misunderstanding. If we treat Eden 6 with respect, maybe it will teach us instead of resisting us." Lyra smiled. "It's already teaching us. Every plant, every root, every drop of soil. It wants us to learn." Mara watched the girl, a sense of calm washing over her. She realized that the ranch was no longer just about survival. It was about cooperation between humans, between the land, and now, between humans and alien life. That evening, as the twin moons rose over Eden 6, Mara sat on the porch with Rylan and Lyra. The glowing vines illuminated the fields, casting gentle shadows across the land. The air was crisp and clean, and the soft hum of life seemed to fill every corner of the ranch. "I never imagined something like this," Mara said quietly. "I thought I was just trying to survive. But now I feel like we're part of something bigger." Lyra nodded, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "We are. Eden 6 is teaching us how to live here, not just survive. If we listen, it will guide us." Rylan smiled, his hand resting on Mara's shoulder. "We're lucky to have her, Mara. She's special. And I think the ranch is lucky too." Mara felt a warmth in her chest. For the first time since her husband's death, she felt a real sense of possibility. The land wasn't just something to work and endure, it was something to understand, to respect, and to cooperate with. As night fell, Lyra wandered among the glowing vines, whispering to them softly. Mara watched, amazed by the bond between the girl and the land. She realized that the ranch would never be the same again, not just because the crops were thriving, but because the very soil beneath their feet had become an ally. "Tomorrow," Mara said softly, "we'll explore more of the ranch. I want to see what else Eden 6 wants to teach us." Lyra nodded, her silver hair shimmering in the moonlight. "It has many lessons. We just need to pay attention." And outside, the wind carried a soft, whispering sound through the fields, like the laughter of the soil itself. Mara felt a quiet certainty. Eden 6 was alive, aware, and willing to work with humans who treated it with care. For the first time in years, Mara slept with hope, not fear. The lonely ranch was no longer just a place of struggle. It was a place of learning, growth, and unexpected wonder. The glow of the vines continued through the night, a gentle promise that the land itself was alive, and that humans, if patient and respectful, could be more than mere visitors on this distant moon. They could be partners. The morning on Eden 6 was quiet, almost eerily still. Mara Lorne awoke to the soft hum of her ranch and the gentle glow of the luminescent vines that had begun to cover parts of her fields. The twin moons reflected faintly in the dew on the crops, giving the land a calm, magical appearance. She could hear the distant lowing of cattle and the faint whisper of the wind through the alien plants. Rylan was already outside, checking the fences. His careful movements reflected years of experience. Lyra, as always, was closer to the soil, crouched in the west field, whispering softly to the earth. Mara wrapped herself in her jacket and stepped onto the porch, feeling a strange mixture of anticipation and worry. Today, the council would return. Their drones had left yesterday after the brief inspection, but the glowing vines and unusual health of Mara's crops had undoubtedly raised more questions than answers. She wasn't sure what to expect. Rylan noticed her from across the field. "Don't worry," he called. "We'll show them the ranch. The land is ready to speak for itself." Mara nodded, though the knot in her stomach didn't loosen. Lyra, seemingly aware of her worry, looked up from the soil. "The land wants us to show them," she said softly. "It's ready. You just need to trust it." The council drones arrived in the afternoon, hovering silently above the ranch. This time, the council sent not just automated drones but a small team of inspectors, each dressed in the pale uniforms of Eden 6 administration. They stepped carefully onto Mara's land, clearly uneasy at the sight of the glowing plants and unusually healthy crops. One of the inspectors, a tall figure with sharp eyes and a thin voice, stepped forward. "Mara Lorne, we are here to assess the productivity and safety of your ranch. Explain these anomalies." Mara nodded and gestured toward the glowing vines. "These are part of the land. They appeared naturally. My assistant, Lyra, has a way of understanding the soil and the plants. It's not magic, it's observation, care, and patience." The inspector's eyes flicked to Lyra, then back at Mara. "And this child, you claim she is responsible for the success of your crops?" Lyra stepped forward calmly, her small hands folded in front of her. "I help the land understand how we care for it," she said. "If we listen, it responds. It wants us to thrive with it, not against it." There was a moment of silence. The inspectors looked at each other, clearly unsure how to respond to a child speaking of soil and plants, as if they had a mind of their own. Mara watched Lyra, proud and astonished. She had never seen anyone so small command the attention of adults in such a natural way. Rylan moved beside Mara, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "The girl is telling the truth," he said quietly. "Eden 6's ecosystem is alive in ways most people don't understand. She helps it cooperate with us." The inspectors began their evaluation, scanning the fields and taking measurements of soil, crops, and water distribution. They checked the irrigation lines, inspected the cattle, and carefully observed the glowing vines. As they moved, the vines seemed to shift gently, as if guiding the inspectors along the healthiest paths. Mara could see Lyra subtly gesturing with her hands, whispering soft directions that made the plants adjust their growth patterns just slightly. One of the inspectors knelt beside a glowing patch of vines. "This is extraordinary," she admitted. "I've never seen a plant respond to human interaction in this way. The soil, too, it appears unusually healthy." Lyra smiled faintly. "It only happens when we treat the land with care. It listens to us when we listen to it." Mara felt a sense of pride swell in her chest. Her ranch had been struggling, but now it was thriving not just because of hard work, but because humans and Eden 6 were cooperating in ways that neither species had attempted before. The inspection continued through the afternoon, with the council members growing more and more intrigued. They watched as Lyra guided the irrigation, whispered to the soil, and carefully adjusted plant growth. Even the luminescent vines seemed to respond to her presence, moving gently as if bowing to the child. Finally, the lead inspector spoke, his voice softer than before. "Mara Lorne and Lyra, it seems the land itself is aiding your ranch. This is highly unusual. Normally, Eden 6's soil resists human farming techniques. But your methods, they are extraordinary." Lyra looked up at him. "The land is not resisting. It wants to work with us. We just need to listen." Another inspector frowned, clearly skeptical. "Are you suggesting that the soil communicates?" Lyra nodded. "Not with words, with care, attention, and understanding. When we respect it, it shows us how to grow." Mara felt a warmth in her chest. Lyra's abilities, her calm, patient guidance, and her respect for Eden 6 were changing the way humans interacted with the planet. And now, even the council seemed to sense it. As the day turned into evening, the inspectors finally stepped back. Looking over the thriving fields, the glowing vines shimmered softly in the fading light, and the crops were taller and healthier than Mara had ever seen them. The cattle grazed calmly, seeming content as the wind moved through the pasture. The lead inspector spoke again, this time with a tone of admiration. "It seems the land itself has chosen to cooperate with you. Rarely have we seen such harmony between humans and Eden 6's ecosystem. Your methods And the guidance of this child may serve as a model for future settlements. Mara felt her eyes widen. A model for the colony? After months of struggle, months of working alone, she had never imagined such recognition. Ryland stepped beside her, smiling proudly. I told you, Mara. Eden 6 wants to work with us, not against us. Lyra simply smiled, her silver hair glowing faintly in the moonlight. It's just a matter of listening, she said softly. The council inspectors finally left, returning to their ships. The drones followed, scanning the fields one last time, before vanishing into the sky. Mara, Rylan, and Lyra stood together, watching as the wind carried the soft whispers of the soil and the glowing vines swayed gently in response. Mara exhaled slowly. I can't believe it, she said. The council actually understands. Even if a little. Maybe things can change here after all. Lyra's small hand reached out and rested on Mara's arm. They will see more, if we keep listening, she said. The land has many lessons. Rylan nodded. And we'll be here to learn them. Together. That night, the three of them sat on the porch, looking out at the glowing fields. The vines shimmered gently under the light of the twin moons, casting soft shadows across the ranch. Mara felt a quiet joy she hadn't experienced since before her husband died. Her ranch was thriving, yes, but more importantly, she was part of something bigger. Lyra wandered among the glowing vines, whispering softly. Mara watched her, fascinated. She realized that the child's presence didn't just improve the ranch, it seemed to improve Eden 6 itself. Somehow, the girl's connection to the land allowed both humans and the ecosystem to thrive together. Rylan placed a reassuring hand on Mara's shoulder. We've done something good here, he said. The land trusts us. And the colony sees it too. Mara nodded, her eyes shining. Yes. For the first time, I feel like this ranch isn't just surviving. It's alive. We're part of it. And it's part of us. Outside, the luminescent vines shimmered in the soft wind. Their gentle glow, a promise of growth, cooperation, and hope. The low hum of the soil, the whispering of the plants, and the calm of the twin moons reminded Mara that Eden 6 was alive, and it had chosen to work with humans who cared. As she looked at Lyra, so small yet so powerful in her quiet way, Mara realized the truth. The lonely ranch she had feared would end in solitude and struggle was now a beacon of harmony. The land had accepted them, and in return, they had learned how to listen, care, and thrive together. Mara leaned back, closing her eyes for a moment. She felt the soil beneath her feet, the gentle pull of the wind, and the soft glow of the alien plants. For the first time in years, she truly understood what it meant to be part of Eden 6, not as a conqueror, but as a partner. And under the twin moons, the ranch seemed to hum with life, ready to teach its new family the next lessons in patience, respect, and cooperation. The morning sun rose over Eden 6 with a golden glow, reflecting off the soft, luminescent vines that had now become a familiar part of Mara Lorne's ranch. The twin moons, fading slowly in the sky, cast gentle shadows over the fields, revealing crops that were taller, healthier, and more vibrant than Mara had ever seen. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of soil and plants, alive and humming with energy. Mara stepped outside, feeling the cool morning wind brush against her face. Her hands instinctively rested on the fence as she looked over her land. The fields stretched farther than she had imagined they ever could, filled with thriving crops, grazing cattle, and glowing vines that moved subtly in response to her presence. It was a sight that filled her heart with pride and awe. Lyra was already in the west field, kneeling beside a patch of glowing vines, whispering softly. The small girl's silver hair caught the sunlight, glimmering as if reflecting the energy of the land itself. Rylan adjusted the irrigation lines nearby, checking the water flow and ensuring the new crops were evenly nourished. Mara couldn't help but smile at the harmony of the scene, human, child, and land working together as one. "Morning, Mara," Rylan called, noticing her at the fence. Everything looks good today. The land's happy, Mara nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest. It's more than good. It's alive. I never thought I'd see Eden 6 like this. Lyra looked up from her work, her small hands brushing lightly over the glowing vines. It wants to grow, she said simply, and it's glad we're helping. The events of the previous council inspection had changed everything. Mara's ranch was no longer just a struggling homestead on a distant moon. The council had recognized the unusual success of her crops and the remarkable harmony between humans and the land. They had promised to support her operations and share her methods with other settlements. This news had brought hope not only to Mara but to the frontier colonies that had long struggled to terraform and sustain life on Eden 6. Rylan approached Mara and Lyra, a small smile on his face. Looks like we're becoming more than just a ranch. Maybe this place can be a model for others. Mara nodded. It already feels like more than just a ranch to me. It feels like a home. She glanced at Lyra, who was still kneeling among the vines. And we have you to thank for that, Lyra. The girl looked up, eyes shining. I just listen. The land does the rest. Mara laughed softly, shaking her head. You make it sound so simple. But I know it's not. By midday, the first group of colony visitors arrived, small teams of scientists and farmers, eager to learn from Mara, Rylan, and Lyra. The glowing vines and healthy crops had become a curiosity and a symbol of hope for everyone who had once thought Eden 6 too harsh to sustain life. The visitors watched as Lyra moved gracefully among the crops, guiding water and energy where it was needed, her soft whispers seeming to direct the growth of the plants. Mara and Rylan explained the technical adjustments they had made, but it was Lyra's connection with the land that impressed the visitors most. One of the scientists, a middle-aged woman with a friendly smile, knelt beside Lyra and whispered, "How do you know what to do?" Lyra smiled faintly. "I just listen. The soil, the plants, the water, they all tell me what they need. You just have to pay attention." The scientist nodded slowly, clearly amazed. "I've studied Eden 6 for years, and I've never seen anything like this." Rylan placed a reassuring hand on Mara's shoulder. "This ranch was always special, Mara. We just needed someone who could understand it." Mara felt her heart swell. She had feared loneliness, failure, and the loss of the ranch she loved so much. Now, with Rylan and Lyra by her side, the ranch was thriving in ways she had never dreamed possible. And more than that, it was teaching the colony how to work with Eden 6, not against it. As the afternoon wore on, Mara walked the fields with Lyra. The glowing vines swayed gently in the soft breeze, almost as if greeting her. Mara knelt beside one of the patches, brushing her fingers along the luminescent leaves. "They're beautiful," she whispered. Lyra nodded. "They like it here. They like us caring for them. When we work with them, they grow stronger, and the land becomes happier." Mara smiled. "I think your father would be proud of you." Lyra's eyes widened slightly. "I hope so. I just want to help the land. Like he taught me." Rylan approached them quietly, watching the interaction with a small smile. "You've learned quickly," he said to his daughter. "The land trusts you." Lyra nodded. "It trusts all of us, if we treat it right." Evening fell, painting the sky in shades of violet and pink. The twin moons began to rise, casting a gentle glow over the ranch. Mara, Rylan, and Lyra sat on the porch, watching the fields sway under the wind. "You know," Mara said quietly, "I never thought I'd feel like this. I thought Eden 6 would always be a struggle, a place of work and worry. But now," she paused, taking a deep breath, "it feels like home. And not just a ranch. Something bigger." Rylan nodded. "We've found a new way to live here. A way that respects the land and works with it." Lyra's small hand found Mara's, squeezing it gently. "The land listens to us. And we listen to it. That's how we grow together." Mara smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't known in years. For the first time, the ranch wasn't just about survival. It was about harmony, partnership, and understanding. The struggles of the past months seemed distant now, replaced by hope, care, and a sense of purpose. As night settled over Eden 6, the glowing vines illuminated the fields, creating a soft, magical light. The crops shimmered under the twin moons, and the soil seemed to hum with quiet energy. Mara could feel it beneath her feet, the life of the land, alive and aware, responding to their care. "I think we've found something rare," Mara said softly. "Not just a way to farm, but a way to live." Rylan nodded. "And it's all because we work together. The land, the child, and us." Lyra smiled faintly. "And there's still more to learn. The land has many lessons. We just need to keep listening." Mara felt a sense of peace. For years, she had feared that Eden 6 was too harsh, too lonely, too alien to allow her to thrive. Now, with Rylan and Lyra by her side, she realized that the moon wasn't just a challenge, it was a teacher. And the ranch wasn't just a survival effort, it was a place of partnership, learning, and hope. The colony would come to see Mara's ranch as a model. But she knew that the real lesson wasn't about crops, technology, or irrigation. It was about patience, care, respect, and listening to the world around you. Eden 6 had chosen them, and in return, they had learned to choose it back, to nurture it, understand it, and thrive with it. As the night deepened, the three of them stood at the edge of the fields, watching the glowing vines sway gently in the wind. The twin moons reflected softly on Lyra's silver hair, on Rylan's rugged face, and on Mara's own tired but happy expression. "This ranch," Mara said quietly, "is no longer just mine. It belongs to all of us. And maybe it belongs to the future too." Lyra nodded. "If we care for it, it will care for us." Rylan smiled, placing his arm around Mara's shoulders. "And together, we'll keep learning. Together, we'll keep growing." Mara felt tears well up. Not of sadness, but of joy. The lonely ranch that had once been a place of struggle had become a place of life, learning, and hope. She realized that the bond between humans and Eden 6 was stronger than she had ever imagined. And with Lyra's gentle guidance and Rylan's steady support, the ranch would continue to thrive. The glowing vines shimmered softly under the moons, the soil hummed quietly, and the cattle moved calmly through the fields. Eden 6 was alive. The humans were alive. And together, they had become something new, something beautiful. Mara closed her eyes, taking a deep breath of the crisp, fragrant air. For the first time in years, she felt completely at peace. The ranch was alive, her family was alive, and the land itself was alive. And in that unity, there was hope, joy, and the promise of a future that could grow brighter with every day. Under the twin moons, the ranch, the family, and the land breathed as one.